Welcome to the Vegas Insider YouTube channel. I'm TommyFreezePops, and I'm joined by one of the great race car drivers of his generation, Juan Pablo Montoya. And we're here to talk about a race that you won back in 2005, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. And we'll start right there. Is there anything from your win at Silverstone back in '05 that the current grid can note ahead of Sunday?
So, first of all, thank you for having me again. It's really exciting to be here. The Silverstone race is very tricky. It's a really cool racetrack. Most of the teams have extra pressure, and the reason of the extra pressure is because 90% of the teams are based in the UK. So it's their home race. Like the teams will give a lot of them, a lot of employees tickets. So there's a lot of employees there. A lot of sponsors are based in the UK. It's like F1, like the main office of F1 is in London. Everything is based there. So it is a huge deal. It's a huge event. So there's always extra pressure. There's always extra motivation for a team like Ferrari, for example, that are not based in the UK to beat. It's a good race for a lot of people based in the UK to try to put a good show. So it's fun. When you're an F1, you have your home race where you grew up, or the air. Like my home race at the time was either I always looked at like Brazil being my home race, that it was the closest to Colombia and being in Latin America, and then you had the team race that was the British Grand Prix, and then when I did F1, both of my teams were on German power, so the German Grand Prix was always a big deal.
Let's look ahead at the race at Sunday. What do you expect to be some of the key factors that'll determine both the qualifying and the race?
I think the race will really suit the Ferraris. I think the Ferraris are going to be really, really strong. I think it's a very good racetrack for them. They seem to be really quick right now. The question is, can they put it together? And I think that's everybody's wondering is, do they have what it takes, or does Red Bull, keep getting away with the wins? You know what I mean? It's incredible to see. You know what I mean? And Max is doing an amazing job, and Checo this year has really stepped it up. You gotta say, you gotta give him kudos for that. Like last year, he did a really good job as a number 2, but people were like, it's like everybody else. It has like they're trying to be 2 number 1s, and they looked at Checo last year like a number 2, and Checo, some of the races this year, he's been a threat. He's been on pole, and he's won a race, so he looks really, really strong. So it's good to see.
Looking ahead at Sunday here and looking at the track and how cars have performed of late, who do you think has the advantage at Silverstone on Sunday?
From what you see, you gotta say it's gonna be either a Ferrari or a Red Bull. The one of the key things here is this is probably one of the fastest tracks they go to from cornering wise. Is where the biggest amount of high-speed corners. And if you look at when they race like Barcelona, a lot of teams had a lot of issue with purposing, like in turn 3. That is the long right-hander when you're going through it, and they're going through the corner. The car is still like, the rear is still bouncing around, and it's making it really difficult. And it's always a limiting factor. And here you have, what they call the Beckett's complex. It's one of the fastest complexes you do in a race car, and you're gonna see people struggling, and whoever gets it right. And Red Bull seems to be always the team to get it right. And even if they don't get it right, they're probably the most consistent car. I think Ferrari is the quicker car, but I think Red Bull might be a little easier to drive. So, my money might be, the way it is, you would say this track, it's most likely would be a Max win. And if Ferrari can put it together, then it's a Charles win right now. I think Carlos is struggling a little more.
So you mentioned Red Bull, you mentioned Max Verstappen. They're the odds-on favorite to win on Sunday at -110. Charles Leclerc next in line at +225. Why do you think Max is such a heavy favorite for Sunday as we sit here for our recording on Tuesday morning?
I think the biggest thing for him right now is that he's been winning a lot of races lately. So when you start winning races, everything starts coming together. Like, like you gotta think like this. You go into the race weekend, and even when you haven't been the quickest, you've been winning the races. The team has been doing the strategy to win the races. Everything, when he didn't win, it was more, his teammate won. You know what I mean? It's like Ferrari, only Charles has won. It's just their mindset, everything is right. Ferrari is going into the race weekend thinking, what do we need to do to be able to close this deal? Even if we have the faster car, how are we going to win this race? Because even with a faster car, we're throwing away wins. You look at Monaco, Charles had a 5-second lead, and they made the wrong call. They went too conservative, and Checo and Red Bull outsmarted them and beat them, and that's where it gets difficult. It's Red Bull's strategy right now. It's head and shoulders ahead of Ferrari. I think Red Bull over the past few years had to really step up their game, because they were going against Mercedes the last few years, and they were the inferior car until last year. They were the inferior car. So when they were close, they really had to try to outsmart Mercedes for the wins. So I think their understanding of the race strategy and how to call the races, they're not afraid of being more aggressive. Where I think Ferrari, they've been off the pace for so long that right now, when they're winning, is like, oh, let's not touch anything, let's not screw up. You know what I mean? It's like when you're doing well sometimes and you still got ways to go, and you're like, let's not screw up. And every time you think let's not screw up, you end up screwing up.
Right. So you mentioned Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, currently the fourth best odds in the field at +1,000. He's won this race 8 times. Do you think he or his Mercedes team could be on the podium on Sunday?
So the big question mark is, being the British race, I'm pretty sure there's going to be big updates coming into the cars. We had one when they came back to Europe a few races ago, and I think this one will see another jump and upgrades. The question again is, one of the things that we spoke earlier is, you got to remember the cars might look very similar every week, but every race or every couple of races, there's something new in the car. And when you have new things in the car, you have new performances. You don't know. You could be looking. McLaren is started very strong, and lately they've been, they've been losing a little bit of pace, but they're right there. They were ahead of Mercedes. Mercedes made a huge jump. The question is, who's going to make the next big jump that we don't see? And you got to remember, everybody's supposed to have their own evolution of things, but you can take pictures. You can see what everybody else is doing, and you can go and try it in the wind tunnel and come up with your own solution, and you're going to make your car better. So the question is, how much better can you really make it? And that's where the unknowns into the weekends, and for the betting side, I think is really cool, is you look at Lewis's pace, for example, in Barcelona. After the incident, he was fighting fast enough to fight for the win. His qualifying pace were not there, but the race pace was unbelievably quick. He genuinely had pace to go for the win. So if they have another step and they can keep solving their issues with their car, because I think their car has enough speed, if they can solve their issues, we might, you might see, Lewis on the podium. And, he's one of those guys that the home race is a big deal. He's won it a lot of times. And that race for him, for some reason, even when things go wrong, he's got the luck on his side so many times.
So you talked about McLaren there. They started off the season well. Results recently haven't been great. For Sunday's race, Lando Norris is sitting at +15,000. Daniel Ricciardo sitting at +25,000. How do you think McLaren can improve, and do you like either Lando or Ricardo heading into Sunday?
Mom, yeah, I think that they have a lot of potential, and I'm pretty close to McLaren because I raced with them in the Indy 500 from the IndyCar side, so I know a lot of the people and everything. I worked with Andrea Seidel before when I was in Formula One, when I did the Porsche test, so I know the people really well, and I know how capable they are of coming up with the goods, and I think they will get better and better. I think I think they, I don't know, I haven't asked lately, but I think they were surprised. And I think I was surprised personally when the car didn't go faster with their last update. And I'm pretty sure the question is, when is the next big update coming? Because you got to remember when you find something, okay, so you either do it in CFD or wind tunnel. So you come up with a new concept. You go, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna change the concept of the car a little bit, and we gotta change the front wing. We gotta change the floor. We gotta change the side puts. The diffuser. We gotta change half of the freaking car every time you do something. The problem with this is you gotta do it in a scale model. Then you gotta do it in with the CFD, and then you gotta build it. And whether you like it or not, you're not building, a 4x4 flat piece of carbon. You're building, you got to do the molds of every part, and then you got to build enough parts. And at the same time, you got to build parts for the current cars it's running. So when you have, let's say you have X amount of stock of parts, when you have a crash, and I think that's has been frustrated with Mick Schumacher, is they don't, it's not like it's been on purpose, but when you have those big crashes, every time you're developing new parts, you gotta stop and you gotta rebuild all the parts just to keep the car running. So that's where it gets difficult, because the lead time from a new idea here to an idea on the race car is 2-3 months. So on paper, they might have a car that is capable of being on the podium, and probably a lot of people do. But the question is how fast they can bring it to the racetrack. That's where it gets really interesting, because everybody's keeping developing and developing. And this year, with it being a new rule, the changes are not small. The changes are huge, because it's a new way of thinking about the car. It's just, imagine if you're like a normal guy, like if you play golf and they said, okay, next year we're playing left-handers. If you're a righty, you got to play lefts. Why? Well, that's the new rule. And so the manufacturers got to come up with ways for you to be able to swing the club the wrong way. And, so the mentality is, do we just flip them, or do we, and somebody will come up a better idea, and your swing speed would be different and everything. And in racing is the same. The way the downforce needs to be generated in this car is very different, and by being so different, creates a lot of issues, but at the same time creates a lot of opportunities for people to make big steps. And if you look at all the Ferrari teams, they made a big step forward from last year. If you look at Ferrari last year was like a P8, P10 car, and this year they're winning. But if you look at a Haas was completely in the back of the grid. This year they're midfield. Those guys can qualify in the top 10 when they get it right, and you go, wow, that's amazing. But most of the time they qualify in the top 10, there's a Ferrari on pole. So it's kind of the package. If the Ferrari package works, then they're really strong.
All right, hot seat time, Juan. You ready for this? Winner on Sunday. Pick it right now. Hot seat.
My money's on Max. If I was putting money on, I would be Max. If I wanted to take a gamble, a small gamble, you would go with Charles. A big gamble with Lewis. I mean, Lewis could surprise, and Mercedes could surprise. If anybody could surprise in Silverstone, would be Lewis.
Juan Pablo Montoya, thank you so much for joining us as always. And thank you for watching our betting preview for the British Grand Prix. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down there in the bottom right corner of your screen. For all our great sports betting content here at Vegas Insider, you can check it out every day right here on Vegas Insider TV. I'm Tommy FreezePops, and as always, best of luck with your bets.